Oh, so thousands upon thousands around the world are taking to the streets as they protest for the rights of Palestinians. Now, around the corner, there's another group protesting the rights of Israel. There they are with their placards and their slogans. In the middle somewhere is the police trying to keep the peace, but they'll fail as these two mobs will eventually meet. As I watch from the safety of my lounge at Newcast every night of the Israel-Palestinian conflicts on TVNZ, a news hub, I ponder if any of what they're reporting is true. Yes, there is some truth in the pictures, but New Zealand television channels are overdubbing the commentary with their own voices. And I'm not sure if you've noted, there's no evidence of the supplier of the footage. In the US and England, news organisations are questioning whether their own reporters' motivation and political bias over news reports, because even they are starting to pick up on the Palestinian bias towards news. We hear sensational reports about hospitals, refugee centres, schools being bombed by Israel, but we very rarely hear about the reasons why they're being targeted. You know, if you hide behind children in hospitals, it's hard to uphold the rules of warfare. While we hear of these reports of bombing, death and calls for ceasefire, here in this country we see so many taking advantage of having their say in fueling the crisis. But the rhetoric that they're displaying in New Zealand, Australia, the United Kingdom, France and also on the streets of America are not heard in Gaza. The Chloe Swarbricks, Greta Looney Tunes of this world have most likely never travelled to Israel and have no understanding about why both Palestinian and Jews don't get along. Notice I didn't use the word hate here. Sometimes we just don't get along with our own neighbours. It might be a simple reason as we don't like their loud music, their loud cars, or maybe the way they don't mow their lawns. But because we don't like them, they don't come into my yard and kill my dog in front of my children. They don't then behead me, rape my wife, and then put my young children in the oven and bake them. But Hamas do. They wouldn't come across the fence and shoot the teenagers at a music festival happening in the town, and they certainly wouldn't behead people and take women and children and hold them hostage. But Hamas do. And then give me the finger and say, you deserve that, and this is what Hamas is doing. In a decent society, we would condone this action. In a decent society, we would be outraged. In a decent society, we would demand justice. But wait, we no longer live in a decent society anymore. Day to day in New Zealand, we only think we do. Outrage is one thing, but the truth is we accept what's happening in the Middle East. You know, we can agree with Israel's right to justice for the first attack, but then they start sending in the tanks, well, indignation comes to the fore. The simple thing is we only see what we want to see, and that is what we see through the eyes of a media which can no longer be trusted. Now, you've probably questioned it yourself at some time. Chloe Swarbrick chanting from the river to the sea is just not acceptable on many levels. Chloe Swarbrick, a member of New Zealand Parliament, calling for genocide and supporting an organisation whose goal it is to rid the world of a particular race is just not acceptable. Chloe Swarbrick trying to walk back the criticism she received is just laughable and, to be honest, ignorant. Only a few in the New Zealand media outlets have covered her outburst only because of the rumblings on social media. Neither her party leaders nor any other political leader in this country has commented on her rhetoric. That is how complacent we are as a country. Yes, we'll all put on our sneakers and join in a protest march at some stage in our lives. But once the speech is made, off we go home to our own sheltered lives. You know, it's sad to say, but like sheep, New Zealanders are drawn to the mob. And when your mob mentality takes over, you do and you say things you, well, maybe wouldn't at another time. Protests are dangerous places, but once mob mentality kicks in, your reasoning will spiral out of control. Now, Chloe Swarbrick can walk back her comments all she likes, but she knew what she was saying. If she didn't, then she's as dumb as we all think she is. Swarbrick to me is a person who has been indoctrinated with the left ideology, hasn't had a real job, comes across like a spoiled brat, but all that to one side, Chloe Swarbrick was guilty of inciting violence and showing New Zealanders just what hate speech really means. If we live in a decent society, Chloe Swarbrick should be in jail. I want to remind you, the viewer, of a quote from Winston Churchill that I've used often. It was, "Never let a crisis go to waste." While the Middle East is taking our attention, what else is happening in the news that we should be concerned about? For example, did you know that the United Nations are planning to take over the sovereignty of our nation? Did you know that politicians are seriously considering the use of facial recognition in surveillance in Australia? Did you know here in New Zealand we've seen the first signs of retailers adopting a cashless mandate? Did you know that New Zealand is heading towards a constitutional crisis? Did you even know that another toddler was killed by the hands which were supposed to protect them in New Zealand? And there's been very little outcry. And did you know that there's still a war happening in the Ukraine? Did you know that everyday tensions between China and the US are escalating? While all of this is going on, New Zealanders' mainstream media is obsessed with stories like a government department staff losing a $27 payout over their Christmas party. How much alcohol should we be drinking when we're in our 50s? Look, I can't help you with the answer to that because the content of that story is behind the New Zealand Herald's paywall. Even an 83-year-old is facing court for damaging a rubbish bin. And of course, the major scoop of the week is being what sort of undies did New Zealand First Leader Shane Jones buy on a shopping trip to Farmers? I kid you not. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't take to the streets to call out the injustices of the world. But if we're going to take to the streets and protest, to shout, to wave a placard, to get arrested, maybe even give up our lives, then let's do it for something that we believe in and for something that we can achieve. Now, do you really believe that the people of Gaza give a toss about Kiwis protesting, or Israel gives a damn about Chloe Swarbrick's views? As a Christian commentator, I just want to know where the voice of the church is these days. Back in August at our last town hall meeting, I asked the question, what sort of country ought we be? Because I must tell you, New Zealand, with its divisiveness perpetrated by the differing groups and political leaders, well, it's not the sort of country that I want to live in. It no longer fits the description of what I call decent.